Hey, Gaming Geek coming at you again with a tutorial on how to build a war game mat or terrain board. So I've been eagerly awaiting Fantasy Flight Games Runewars Miniatures, which is a tabletop war game that's coming out very soon. And as I've been waiting, I've been trying to figure out what kind of mat I want to be playing on or what kind of board. And I looked online on YouTube and saw a bunch of different options. One of the easiest options that you have, where it requires no setup whatsoever in terms of making, is just buying this cheap green felt, and I cut this out to be a 2x2, and you just lay this out and you put your terrain on there. And I actually cut out these pieces for making rivers, and obviously this is super simple and very cheap. And so if you're looking for a very fast, effective way to utilize the table that you already have and you want to get playing right away, this is the cheap way to go. And very portable, right? So if you're going to conventions, you can just fold this up and bring it with you, and it's very compact. But I wanted something a little bit more fancy and realistic, and one of the unusual things about Runewars Miniatures is that it's going to be officially played on a 3-foot by 6-foot surface. And that's a little bit non-standard, since most war games use a 4-foot by 8-foot table. But because of the fact that it's a 3-foot by 6-foot playing surface area, we actually have more options for what we can do. And so I looked online and looked at a number of YouTubers created a canvas mat where they put caulking down, but that way they can, it's a little bit fancier than this, but they can roll it up, they can paint the surface, they can create a rough surface, and that's a great option. But other people made dedicated boards, and I think that's the route that I want to go, is to actually have a 3-foot by 6-foot board. And once I decided to go that direction, again, I watched a number of YouTube videos about how they prepared the surface, or they created a more realistic looking play surface. And there was a number of options out there, and I couldn't really tell from the YouTube videos, and so I went ahead and did a little bit of an experiment, trying out 3 different methods of creating sort of a rough surface for the ground. And so here I actually mixed into the paint. You can buy this stuff at Home Depot or Lowe's, where it creates sort of a rough sandpapery surface for your walls. So some people do that to their walls. Rather than having a smooth wall, they add this, I don't know what it is, it might be plaster bits or something like that, and so that's this surface here. And then this one is just taking sand. I bought a 50-pound bag of sand from Lowe's for like $4. I mixed in some sand directly with the paint, because I was wondering what's the difference between just mixing it with the paint, where the paint functions as glue, versus other videos where I saw other gamers putting down a layer of watered down glue and then putting sand on top of that. So I couldn't really tell from the videos, but I decided to go ahead and do a little bit of an experiment. So this surface here is where where I went ahead and mixed in the sand directly with the paint, and I just painted it down. Now these samples are going to be a little bit different, because instead of rolling it out, I actually brushed it on. And so it's a little bit unfair, because especially with this material, it would probably have more bits to it, but as I was brushing, I noticed that it was brushing away some of the material, and that's the same as well here with the sand. So I'll give you a close-up so that you can see what the difference is between these 3 different methods that I had. At the end of the day, I actually like this method the best. It seems like putting the watered down PVA glue first, and then sprinkling on the sand on top of that, and then putting on a layer of glue gives me the effect that I really want. Because the difference between just mixing it in with the sand, although it's okay, is that you actually get more coverage with the glue than you do with just mixing it in with the sand. Now that might be different if I roll it out. I imagine that there would actually be more sand that sticks to the surface if you roll it, but in terms of the effect that I want, I think I really like the glue method the best, even though it adds a layer, another step to the whole process. So I went ahead, after determining that this is the surface that I wanted, I went ahead to Lowe's to figure out what material that I needed. And originally what I was going to do was frame out 2 3-foot by 3-foot boards, and then they were just going to be side by side. And to actually use this material on top of a frame using 1x2s underneath it. That way I could keep it light, and having it modular, I even thought about the fact that these 2 pieces could be rotated so that it creates different play surfaces. But when I got to Lowe's, a thought occurred to me that I can actually buy a 3-foot by a little bit more than 6-foot board that's pre-made, where I wouldn't have to cut, where I wouldn't have to buy separate pieces and put the whole thing together. And that is using a pre-made hollow core door. And that's what I ended up doing, picking up one of these at my local Lowe's for only $35. So for less than a regular 3-foot by 3-foot mousepad mat dedicated for gaming, I can buy an entire door that is actually 3 feet wide by 6 foot 8-inch long piece. And so if you don't have any tools, this is an incredibly cheap and affordable way to go. I would suggest, rather than getting a piece of plywood, which is actually more heavy than a hollow door, I would suggest buying the door. It will cost you only a little bit more to buy the door rather than getting the plywood, because you would have to buy a 4-foot by 8-foot piece anyway, and then have it come down to 3-foot by 6-foot. So check it out here. This is the hollow door. Make sure you get the hollow one. You can get solid ones, but they're more expensive. And see how light this is and easy it is to carry around. So this is the perfect size. It's 3 foot wide. It sells at 3 feet, and it's 6 foot by 8 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and cut off 8 inches off the end. Like I mentioned, if you don't have tools, you can definitely skip this step. I just wanted it to be exactly 6 feet long. But you can use the extra 8 inches, which isn't that much at all, for just putting your books on there or other supplies or dice. So I'm going to be using my circular saw to make this cut, but in order to make a straight cut, I will use a guide. And in the past, I've just used a piece of wood like this scrap 2x4, measured it out 1.5 inches from where I needed the cut to be, and then clamped it down, and then used this as a guide to run my circular saw up against. Since then, I have purchased this nifty gadget, which functions exactly the same way, but it is a lot faster. You just sort of line it up where you need it to be, and then you can just pull down on this crank and it locks into place, and that's how you run your circular saw, right up against this. So what I want to do now is try to take this apart so that I can possibly use the spacer down at the bottom. And I'll clean that up. Alright, so this took a little bit of work to get all the sides off. I used a chisel to basically rough out most of the pieces, which is over there. All the pieces are right there. And I had to use my belt sander, run it along here in order to sand off the rest of it so that it is able to fit in this slot again, like this. So I also had to use the chisel to clear out these supports here, and there was glue stuck down here, so I chiseled off. It wasn't that hard. I chiseled out these spots here so that this piece would fit back in there. So I'm just going to go ahead and glue this thing right back in there. That's in place. I'm just going to clamp it down. Alright, so for this next step, we're going to go ahead and mix up our glue. A lot of people on YouTube mixed up just PVA glue, which is white Elmer's glue, but right now it's really hard to get white Elmer's glue because it's a fad for kids to make their own slime, and it uses up white glue, and so I haven't been able to find any white glue, so I just went ahead and will be using wood glue. So this big thing is about $4 at Lowe's, and I'm going to mix it with a ratio of about 1 part glue to about 1 or 2 parts water, so about half and half, a little bit more water instead. And then this is a sand that I got. It's basically play sand, again, at Lowe's. I think this was like $4 as well for this huge bag. I'm never going to use all that sand. I went ahead and just put a little bit in this bucket here so that I can move around a little bit more easily. And then I have an old brush that I'll be using to put the glue onto the board. So I think 1-to-1 ratio is actually pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and start this from this end and slather on the glue. And you can be pretty generous with this because the sand will soak it up. And then grab your sand. Be generous with it. I have a drop cloth underneath this to catch any sand. Put plenty on there. And don't go all the way to the edge of your glue because you want to be able to come back and do the next portion before it dries. You need to do this edge right too, so you keep going here. Yeah. So here it is completed with all the sand on there that I want, and the sun keeps coming in and out in this area, so I'm not entirely sure how long it will take, but I'll probably leave it alone for at least a couple of hours. Well, it looks like it's about to rain, so I went ahead and after about 4 hours of drying, I just tipped it over and all the sand, loose sand, came off down there, and I think it looks pretty good. Here's a close-up of it. Okay, so for the painting, I just got the cheapest paint I could. I think this is like $9. And the color I picked, you can pick any dark brown, but the one I got is Little Bear, an Olympic color. Any dark brown will do though. The reason why I'm using a roller rather than a brush, even though this small space is probably not worth using a whole roller, is because using a brush I would probably lift up a lot or brush away a lot of the sand. So this way this functions as another sealant, for the sand. So you want to be pretty generous and liberal with your paint, because a lot of that paint is going to be absorbed by the sand. So this won't take me very long just to put this coat on. While this top is still drying, I'm going to go ahead and put some black. I had some left over from another project. This brown color is actually flat, and actually I wish I had some semi-gloss at least, because flat paint scratches really easily, and so for the edge it's better to have a surface that is not won't scratch that much. But since I don't want to go out and buy black paint just for the edge, I'll go ahead and just put this on and not worry about it getting dinged up or scratched up. So I'll just do this all the way around. Alright, so now all the paint is dry, and what I'm going to do now is dry brush the top. And the color that I'm using is a, let me see, from Lowe's. This is a sample, so it's only like $3.50. Valspar Gleaming Tan. So any kind of medium sort of tan color will work, or lighter brown. And what I'm going to do is a technique called dry brushing. So I got one of these throwaway brushes, but I actually trimmed off maybe about ½ an inch, because I want these bristles to be stiff when I'm dry brushing. So I'll show you how the technique works. So basically you get some paint, and the reason why it's called dry brushing is that you want to rub off the excess paint so that your brush is relatively dry. And then what you do is you go to the surface and you sort of lightly brush so that just the rough surface is grabbing the paint, and not you're not going deep into the crevices. So that's the effect that you're trying to get at, is to pull out the and go in multiple directions, but you're pulling out and highlighting the raised areas. So this might be hard to see. Sorry, the light, because it became overcast, it might be hard to see, but let me zoom in a little bit here, and you can see the difference between the area that I just painted and what isn't painted. So that's basically the effect that you're trying to go after. So here's the difference between the side that is dry brushed and the side that isn't. So, and you'll notice that I made it sort of splotchy, and that's intentional. You sort of want to make it uneven, because ground is usually not a uniform color. Alright, so dry brushing doesn't take very long to dry at all. In fact, once you're done, you're ready to go on to the next step. So now we're going to be flocking, and what I have here is Woodland Scenic's Blended Turf, which is, I think you can buy bags of these, and I think these are on Amazon for like 11 bucks each. The bags are cheaper because you're not getting as much. We'll see how much of this stuff we're going to use. This time around I am going to use my limited white glue, because I don't want the yellow from the wood glue to show through. So I have this bottle, fortunately, and so we'll be able to do that. I'm going to mix 50-50 with white and water. I'm just going to randomly sort of put some of this down. Think sort of camouflage patterns. his hair is falling off. That won't matter. Alright, so once you do that, just want to sprinkle a little bit on here. Enough to cover this area. So I'm going to go ahead and do this around the whole table and alternating with some of this color as well. Okay, so I am done flocking, and now what I've done is just taken an old spray bottle and mixed up more PVA glue, and the ratio this time is way more watered down, probably 1 part glue to 4 parts water, and I'm just going to spray over all of this so that it seals it in. So this is the next morning, and a couple of issues and problems came up. One, I think it looks too splotchy, and so I'm not too happy with how the overall design came out. So I feel like I need to fill in a lot of these spots because the contrast is too high between the dirt and the dark green. So I'm thinking of mixing up my 2 different colors to make a middle color green and then fill in some of these spots. Also, I noticed that the spray, PVA spray, didn't really adhere this down, so I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with that. Might just need to coat the whole thing or brush on some PVA afterwards. So gonna work at it again and see if I can improve it today. So to make my mix, I just am dumping about half and half of this dark green stuff. And then the blended turf. And I found this, the kids' sandbox. Just mix it all together, and it gives me this medium green color. Alright guys, I finished finally, and I like the pattern that came out from adding the medium green. And even though it's more splotchy than I was wanting, it still turned out pretty cool. I like it a lot. And I have it on just this foldable table. And we'll see if I need to put in some block support so that it isn't being pushed around, because right now it's just loose, and I can lift it just with one hand. So it's very light. I can store it away when I'm not using it, and I think it looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and set up some of the scenery so that you can see what it looks like. Obviously I don't have Runewars Miniatures yet, so I'll just put on some other minis and some terrain that I already have. So I am incredibly happy and satisfied with how the table turned out. It was relatively easy to make and relatively inexpensive as well. If you are going to buy one of the pre-made battle mats, my guess is that it's going to be at least $55 to maybe $75 for a 6 foot by 3 foot wide battle mat. That's definitely an option, but if you want to go with something a little bit cheaper and you have the satisfaction of making it yourself, definitely go with this pre-made table and just throw on some paint, some sand, and some flocking, and you're good to go. A lot of these are 3D printed, these trees as well as this, various vendors online. I'll leave links down at the bottom. And if you're ready and interested in making this, I hope you take the challenge and make this battle table yourself, and you'll be ready, just like me, to dive into Runewars Miniatures. So until next time, please subscribe, and we will see you later.